They said she was nothing without him. They called her the trophy wife, the silent partner, the shadow behind the throne. But the night Nora Winslow walked out of the most exclusive gala in New York without saying a single word, the world stopped. She thought her life was over. She didn't see the billionaire standing at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't know that when Chase Drayton lifted her hand, he wasn't just saving her reputation. He was about to burn her ex-husband's empire to the ground. This is the story of how silence became the loudest sound in the room. The humidity of a New York July evening usually didn't penetrate the climate-controlled sanctum of the Pierre Hotel. But Nora Winslow felt like she was suffocating. The air in the grand ballroom was thick, not with heat, but with the cloying scent of expensive lilies, old money, and the distinct metallic taste of her own misery. "Smile, Nora. You look like a funeral attendee," Julian Thorne whispered. His voice was low, a velvet threat that only she could hear. To the cameras flashing 10 feet away, he was the picture of the doting husband, or rather, the benevolent ex-husband-to-be who was civil enough to bring his estranged wife to the charity gala of the year. Nora adjusted the strap of her emerald silk gown. It was a dress Julian had chosen. He always chose. "I'm tired, Julian. We've made the appearance. The board sees us. Can I go?" Julian turned, his smile fixed, his eyes dead. He took a sip of his champagne, the crystal flute catching the light of the chandeliers. "You go when I say you go. The merger with Vane Enterprises isn't signed yet. If rumors of a messy divorce spook the investors, I lose leverage. You stand here, you look pretty, and you pretend that you aren't the one who ruined this marriage." Nora didn't flinch. She had spent 10 years flinching, and she had run out of energy for it. The narrative was always the same. Julian, the genius architect of the Thorne Group. Nora, the decorative ornament he had plucked from obscurity. The truth, that Nora's sketches were the foundation of his 3 award-winning skyscrapers, was buried under non-disclosure agreements and emotional manipulation. "I didn't ruin the marriage, Julian," she said softly, staring at the floral centerpiece. "I just stopped being your employee." "You are whatever I need you to be," he hissed, his grip tightening on her elbow. It was subtle, hidden by the sleeve of his Brioni tuxedo, but it was painful. "Look, there's Marcus Sterling, the editor of Global Finance. Laugh at my joke." Julian let out a boisterous, fake laugh, tilting his head back. Nora stood frozen. She couldn't do it. Not tonight. Tonight marked exactly 1 year since she had lost the baby, a trauma Julian referred to as an unfortunate medical delay. The room blurred. The diamonds dripping from the necks of the Manhattan elite looked like shackles. The noise, the polite chatter, the clinking silverware became a roar. "Laugh, damn it," Julian muttered through his teeth. Nora pulled her arm away. It wasn't a violent motion, but in the choreographed world of high society, it was a thunderclap. "No," she said. Julian's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Excuse me?" "No," she repeated, her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I'm done, Julian. The merger, the image, the lies. Keep it all." She turned around. "If you walk away now," Julian warned, his voice rising just enough for the surrounding circle to hear, "you walk away with nothing. I will bury you, Nora. You'll be unhireable. You'll be a pariah." The room went quiet. The orchestra seemed to hesitate. All eyes, hundreds of pairs of judging, curious, hungry eyes, swiveled toward them. This was the drama they craved, the implosion of the Thorne dynasty. Nora didn't look back. She didn't scream. She didn't throw a drink. She simply began to walk. The path to the exit was long, a red-carpeted gauntlet. She could feel the whispers starting, the rustle of silk as people leaned in to gossip. She's crazy. She's ungrateful. Poor Julian. She reached the heavy mahogany doors. The doorman, a young man named Leo, who had always been kind to her, looked concerned. He pushed the door open. "Taxi, Mrs. Thorne?" he asked quietly. "It's Miss Winslow, Leo," she said, stepping out into the muggy night air. "And yes, please." She stood at the top of the hotel stairs. The paparazzi were already there, a wolf pack sensing blood. They saw her alone. They saw the tears she refused to wipe away. Flashbulbs erupted like lightning. "Nora! Nora! Where's Julian? Is the divorce final? Did he kick you out?" She took a step down, then another. She felt dizzy. The world was spinning. She was 32 years old, penniless due to frozen assets, and about to be destroyed by one of the most powerful men in New York. And then the doors behind her banged open. "Get back here!" Julian's voice boomed from the top of the stairs. He had followed her out, a rookie mistake for a man obsessed with control, but his rage had eclipsed his PR training. "Don't you dare walk away from me when I'm speaking to you." Nora froze on the middle step. The paparazzi went into a frenzy. This was the money shot, the angry husband, the fleeing wife. She felt small. She felt inevitable defeat closing in. Then a car door slammed. It wasn't a taxi. It was a matte black phantom, idling at the curb, an island of silence in the chaos. A man had stepped out. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at Julian. He looked up, straight at Nora. He was tall, wearing a suit that cost more than the average American home, but he wore it with a casual disregard. His hair was dark, touched with silver at the temples, and his eyes were like flint. Chase Drayton, the tech billionaire, the recluse, the man who had disappeared from the public eye 5 years ago after selling his AI company for $12 billion. He walked up the stairs, moving through the paparazzi like they were smoke. He stopped 1 step below Nora. The flashes were blinding now, a strobe light effect on the surreal scene. Julian froze at the top of the stairs. "Drayton, what the hell are you doing?" Chase ignored him completely. He reached out a hand. It was a steady, open palm. An invitation. "Nora," Chase said. His voice was calm, deep, and cut through the noise of the street. "Your carriage awaits." Nora stared at the hand. She barely knew him. They had met, briefly, years ago, at a summit in Davos, where she had been taking notes for Julian. Chase had been the only person to ask her opinion on the architecture of the venue. "Why?" she whispered. "Because," Chase said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Queens don't walk in the rain." She placed her hand in his. A collective gasp rippled through the press line. Chase Drayton, the ghost of Wall Street, had just taken the hand of the scandalous ex-wife. He didn't just hold her hand, he lifted it, pressing a chaste, chivalrous kiss to her knuckles, his eyes locking with Julian's over her shoulder. It was a declaration of war. The interior of the Phantom was a sanctuary. The glass was tinted and soundproofed, instantly cutting off the screaming mob and Julian's furious, red-faced shouting. Nora sank back into the leather, her trembling hands clutching her knees. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold wash of reality. "Breathe," Chase said. He wasn't looking at her. He was pouring a glass of water from a crystal decanter built into the console. "Take small sips." He handed her the glass. His fingers brushed hers, warm, steady. "You realize what you just did?" Nora asked, her voice cracking. "Julian will destroy you. He'll say we're having an affair. He'll use this in court to nullify the prenup." Let him try, Chase said, leaning back and crossing his legs. He looked remarkably unbothered. Julian Thorne is a man who thinks power is volume. He thinks if he shouts loud enough, the world bends. I operate differently. I don't even know where we're going, Nora said. I have a studio apartment in Brooklyn. A friend lent it to me. We aren't going to Brooklyn, Chase said. We're going to the Drayton estate in the Hudson Valley. I can't go with you, Nora protested, sitting up straighter. Chase, I appreciate the rescue. Truly, it was cinematic. But I am not a damsel. I need to figure out my life, not hide in a billionaire's castle. Chase turned to her then, his expression shifting from cool detachment to something intense. You aren't a damsel, Nora. You're the architect who designed the spire at Hudson Yards. You're the one who fixed the structural integrity issues on the Thorne Bridge when the engineers failed. You're the one who ghost-wrote Julian's keynote at the G20. Nora's breath hitched. How? How do you know that? I pay attention, Chase said, and I know that Julian has effectively blacklisted you from every major firm in the city. He's told them you're unstable. He's told them you stole his designs. Tears pricked Nora's eyes again. He told me no one would believe me. I believe you, Chase said simply. And I have a proposition. A job? A partnership, Chase corrected. I recently acquired a plot of land, the old rail yards in West Chelsea. It's a mess. Zoning nightmares, environmental hazards. Everyone says it's unbuildable. Julian tried to buy it, and failed. Nora knew the site. She had sketched ideas for it on napkins for years. It was a dream project, a mix of green space and brutalist restoration. I want you to lead the design, Chase said. Total creative control. Your name on the cornerstone, not Mrs. Thorne, Nora Winslow. Nora laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. I can't. My lawyers say I have to lay low. If I start working, Julian will come after the fees. He claims intellectual property over anything I create while we're legally married. Leave the lawyers to me, Chase said. He tapped the partition window, signaling the driver. I have a legal team that makes Julian's retainer look like pocket change, but there's a catch. Nora narrowed her eyes. There's always a catch. You have to live at the estate for the duration of the design phase. It's remote, secure. Julian can't serve you papers if he can't get past the gate. And, he hesitated, a rare moment of vulnerability. I need you to help me with something personal. What? My reputation, Chase admitted. I've been away. The market is nervous about my return. They think I've lost my edge. Being seen with you, the woman who walked away from Julian Thorne, it sends a message. It says I'm not afraid of a fight. So I'm still a prop, Nora said bitterly, just for a different man. No, Chase said firmly. A partner. A prop has no voice. I'm handing you a megaphone, Nora. I'm just asking you to stand next to me while you use it. The car hummed along the highway, the city lights fading behind them. Nora looked at the man beside her. He was offering her a lifeline, but it came with chains. Yet, as she thought about Julian's smug face at the gala and the years of her work being stolen, a spark of anger ignited in her chest. It was better than the sadness. Show me the land, Nora said. Chase smiled. It was the first time she had seen him truly smile, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, less like a statue. First, we get you out of that dress. It looks uncomfortable. Nora looked down at the emerald silk. It is. Good. Because tomorrow we buy work boots. The Drayton estate was less a house and more a fortress of solitude wrapped in limestone and glass. It sat on a cliff overlooking the Hudson River, aggressive in its modernity, yet blending seamlessly with the rock face. As the car pulled up the winding drive, Nora's architectural eye kicked in automatically. Cantilevered terraces, Mies van der Rohe influence. Cold, but magnificent. "It's a bit much," Chase admitted as they stepped out. The night air here was cooler, smelling of pine and river water. "It's lonely," Nora observed. "Beautiful, but designed for one." "It was designed for silence," Chase said. "Come, my staff has prepared a guest suite." The next morning, the silence was broken by the sound of a helicopter. Nora woke up in a bed the size of a small island. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories of the gala flooded back. She grabbed her phone. 203 missed calls, 50 voicemails. Text from Julian. "You have made a grave mistake. Come home now, and I might only cut your allowance by half." She deleted the thread. She found Chase in the kitchen, a sleek, industrial space. He was wearing jeans and a grey t-shirt, looking disturbingly normal as he made espresso. A large flat-screen TV on the wall was muted, showing CNN. The headline read, "The Billionaire and the Runaway, War of the Roses or Corporate Takeover." "Coffee?" Chase asked, sliding a mug across the marble island. "The helicopter?" Nora asked, taking the mug. "My legal counsel. And yours, if you accept." A woman walked into the kitchen. She was sharp-featured, wearing a power suit that looked like armor. "Nora Winslow. I'm Elena Vane. We've never met, but my family's company was about to merge with your husband's." Nora froze. "Vane Enterprises? If you're here, Julian knows where I am." "Julian thinks I'm in London," Elena said, taking a seat. "I'm not here as a Vane. I'm here as Chase's attorney, and frankly, as someone who despises Julian Thorne. Elena is the one who tipped me off that Julian was going to ambush you with divorce papers publicly next week," Chase explained. "He planned to serve you at the Art Basel opening to maximize the humiliation." Nora's grip on the mug tightened until her knuckles turned white. He planned it." "Julian doesn't do anything spontaneously," Elena said. "He needs the narrative that you are unstable so he can claim full ownership of the intellectual property assets, specifically your sketchbooks." "He kept them," Nora whispered. 10 years of work, in the safe at the penthouse." "We're going to get them back," Chase said. "But first, we have to secure your position. Elena has drafted a consulting agreement. It dates back 6 months. "That's fraud," Nora said. "It's corporate maneuvering," Elena corrected. "It states that you have been secretly consulting for Drayton Industries on the West Chelsea project. It gives you a legitimate reason to be with Chase, and it predates the abandonment claim Julian is trying to file." Nora looked between them. "Why are you doing this, Elena? If the merger fails, your family loses millions." Elena's expression softened, just a fraction. "Julian Thorne drove my brother to suicide 3 years ago. A hostile takeover that stripped him of his dignity. I don't care about the millions, Nora. I want to see Julian bleed, and you are the knife." Nora felt a chill. She wasn't just a partner, she was a weapon. She looked at Chase. He wasn't looking at her with pity, but with expectation. "I can't be a knife," Nora said quietly. "I'm an architect. I build things. I don't destroy them." "In this city," Chase said, leaning forward, "sometimes you have to bulldoze the rot before you can build something new. Julian is the rot, Nora. You know it. He stifled your talent. He isolated you. He made you small. Do you want to go back to being small?" Nora walked to the window. Below, the Hudson River churned, grey and powerful. She thought about the unfortunate medical delay. She thought about the nursery she had designed that Julian had turned into a humidor the week after the miscarriage. She turned back to them. Her face was pale, but her eyes were dry. "I don't want to just design the West Chelsea project," she said. Chase raised an eyebrow. "Oh? I want ownership, equity. If we pull this off, if we beat him, I want 10% of the completed development, and I want my name on the building, in letters 10 feet tall, facing his penthouse." Chase's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. He looked at Elena. "Drafted." "Done," Elena said. "One more thing," Nora said, her voice dropping lower. "My sketchbooks. They are in a biometric safe. Only Julian's fingerprint opens it." Chase stood up. "Leave that to me. I have a particular set of skills from my early days in tech. We're going to retrieve them." "How?" "Tonight," Chase said. "Julian is hosting a damage control press conference at the plaza. The penthouse will be empty. We're going to break in." Nora stared at him. "You're a billionaire, Chase. You don't break into penthouses." "I do when they hold the soul of my partner," he said. The air in the kitchen shifted. The word partner hung heavy and charged. Nora realized that for the first time in a decade, she wasn't afraid of what would happen next. She was terrified, yes, but she wasn't dreading it. She was hungry for it. "Okay," Nora said. "Let's go get my life back. The service entrance of the Millennium Tower was supposed to be impenetrable. It was guarded by retina scanners, motion sensors, and a private security team that Julian Thorne paid more than the NYPD. But Julian's arrogance was a structural flaw, one that Chase Drayton had identified hours ago. He never updated the firmware on the biometric locks," Chase murmured, tapping a sequence into a slim, black tablet connected to the panel by a hard line. "He thinks the hardware is enough. Typical. He builds tall, but he doesn't build smart." Nora stood beside him in the shadows of the loading dock, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. They were dressed in nondescript black technicians' coveralls, faces obscured by caps. It felt surreal. 24 hours ago, she had been sipping champagne in a silk gown. Now, she was committing a felony with a billionaire. "If we get caught," Nora whispered, watching the security camera loop that Chase had frozen, "Julian won't call the police. He'll make us disappear. He has fixers." "We won't get caught," Chase said, his voice calm, bordering on bored. "And we're in." The heavy steel door clicked and swung open. They moved quickly through the labyrinthine corridors of the basement, heading for the private elevator that led directly to the penthouse. Nora knew these halls. She had walked them 1,000 times, usually trailing behind Julian as he berated a staff member. The familiarity made her sick. Inside the elevator, Chase used a cloned fob, courtesy of a disgruntled former security chief he had tracked down, to bypass the floor lockout. As the numbers climbed, the pressure in Nora's ears popped, or maybe it was the pressure of her past rising to meet her. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ping. The penthouse was exactly as she had left it. Cold, expansive, and aggressively expensive. The floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Central Park, a dark void in the center of the glittering city. The air smelled of teak and Julian's cologne. "Don't touch anything you don't have to," Chase instructed, pulling on thin gloves. "Where is the safe?" "Master bedroom," Nora said, her voice tight. "Behind the Modigliani." Walking into the bedroom felt like walking into a crime scene where the victim was her own soul. The bed was made with military precision. Her vanity was empty, stripped of her perfumes and brushes, as if she had never existed. Julian had erased her in a day. Chase moved the painting. The safe was a beast of brushed steel, equipped with a biometric scanner and a keypad. "I can bypass the keypad," Chase said, examining it. "But the biometric... I need a print." "You said you had skills," Nora hissed. "I do, but I didn't expect a Tier 1 military-grade lock. He upgraded. Chase frowned. I can crack it, but it will take 20 minutes. We have 5. Nora stared at the keypad. He never changes his codes, she said softly. He thinks he's consistent. I call it lazy. Do you know the backup code? It's not a birthday, Nora said, stepping forward. It's not an anniversary. Julian doesn't care about dates that involve other people. She reached out, her gloved finger hovering over the keys. It's the height of the Thorn Tower. To the inch, it was the day he felt like a god. She typed in the numbers. 14500. The light blinked green. The heavy bolts retracted with a heavy thunk. Chase looked at her, impressed. Narcissism is a vulnerability. I like it. Nora pulled the heavy door open. Inside, stacked neatly, were 12 black moleskin notebooks. Her life's work. The designs for the bridge, the opera house, the solar glass skyscrapers, all the things Julian claimed were his. She grabbed them, shoving them into the canvas bag Chase held open. Wait, Chase said. He reached into the back of the safe. There was a single, red hard drive, sitting on a velvet shelf. It was labeled simply, Prometheus. What is that? Nora asked. I've never seen that. Chase went rigid, his usual cool demeanor fractured, revealing a flash of pure, unadulterated hatred. I have. He grabbed the drive. We need to go, now. Chase, what is it? The reason I disappeared, he said grimly. And the reason Julian is going to rot in prison. Suddenly the elevator chimed in the living room. Nora froze. He's early. The press conference. He must have bailed, Chase whispered. Closet. Now. They slipped into the walk-in closet, just as Julian's voice boomed through the bedroom door. He wasn't alone. I don't care what it costs, Vargas, Julian was shouting. Find her. If she talks to the press before I can file the competency hearing, the stock will plummet. I want her in a facility by Monday. Nora clamped a hand over her mouth. A competency hearing. He was going to have her committed. He was going to lock her away to shut her up. Chase's hand found her shoulder, squeezing hard, grounding her. Through the slats of the closet door, they saw Julian storm into the room, followed by Vargas, his head of security, a man with a neck like a tree trunk and eyes like a shark. Julian walked straight to the safe. He stopped. The Modigliani was crooked. Vargas, Julian said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. The safe. Vargas drew a weapon, a sleek, suppressed pistol. He moved toward the closet. Chase looked around. The closet had a second exit, a panic route Nora had insisted on designing, despite Julian mocking her paranoia. It led to the service stairwell. Chase pointed to the hidden panel behind the suit racks. Nora nodded. As Vargas reached for the closet handle, Chase kicked the panel open. The sound was loud, a crack of wood. Hey! Vargas shouted. They scrambled into the dark, dusty crawl space. Chase shoved a heavy garment rack in front of the opening behind them, just as a bullet thudded into the wall. Run! Chase commanded. They sprinted down 40 flights of concrete stairs, lungs burning, the sound of shouting echoing above them. They burst out into the alleyway, gasping for air, the canvas bag heavy with their spoils. They dove into the waiting phantom, just as the service door burst open. The car screeched away, tires smoking, disappearing into the New York night before Vargas could even raise his radio. Nora slumped back against the seat, clutching the bag of sketchbooks to her chest. She was shaking uncontrollably. He was going to lock me up, she whispered. Chase didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the red hard drive in his hand, his knuckles white. He won't get the chance, Chase said, and his voice was dark, dangerous, and utterly final, because we just stole his nuclear football. The drive back to the Hudson Valley was silent. But the air inside the car was charged with a static tension. The adrenaline of the heist had faded, replaced by the grim weight of what they had discovered. Back at the Drayton estate, Chase went straight to his study, a room that looked more like a NASA command center than a library. Banks of servers hummed in the corner. He plugged the red hard drive into an isolated terminal. Nora stood by the fireplace, still wearing the black coveralls, holding a mug of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. "Chase, talk to me. What is Prometheus?" Chase typed a command, his eyes scanning the cascading code on the screen. 5 years ago, my company, Drayton AI, was on the verge of a breakthrough, a new algorithm for sustainable energy grids. It would have made fossil fuels obsolete in urban planning. It was worth trillions. "I remember," Nora said. "The news said the prototype failed. It caused a blackout in Chicago. You were investigated for negligence. That's why you sold." "The prototype didn't fail," Chase said, turning the screen toward her. "It was sabotaged." Nora stepped closer. The screen showed emails, blueprints, and bank transfers. "Julian," she breathed. "Julian was heavily invested in traditional grid infrastructure," Chase explained. "If my tech worked, his holdings would have been worthless. So, he paid a contractor to introduce a virus into my system during the Chicago test. It caused the overload. People were hurt, Nora. A hospital lost power. I took the fall to protect my team, sold the company, and vanished." Nora read the emails. "Initiate protocol Prometheus. Target, Drayton mainframe. Payment, $5 million to offshore account. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable." "J. Thorne. He destroyed your life for money," Nora said, disgust curling in her stomach. "He destroyed my reputation," Chase corrected. "He made me a pariah. And I've spent 5 years waiting for the proof. I knew he kept it. Julian is a hoarder. He keeps insurance on everyone he hires to do his dirty work, in case they turn on him." Nora looked from the screen to Chase. A realization hit her, cold and sharp. "The safe," she said slowly. "You didn't break in for my sketchbooks, did you?" Chase went still. "You knew the drive was there," Nora continued, her voice rising. "You knew you needed his fingerprint or the code to get it, but you couldn't get close to him. You needed someone who knew the layout, someone he had lowered his guard around." She took a step back. "You needed me." Chase stood up, walking around the desk. "Nora." "I was the key," she said, tears of betrayal stinging her eyes. "That night at the gala, the rescue, the Queen's speech, it was all a calculation. You didn't care about saving me. You just wanted to get into that penthouse." "It started that way," Chase admitted. He didn't flinch, didn't try to lie. "Yes, when I saw you walk out, I saw an opportunity. The enemy of my enemy. I needed a way into his fortress, and you were the only person who had ever lived inside it." Nora threw the canvas bag of sketchbooks onto the floor. "So I'm still a pawn. Julian used me for my talent. You used me for my access. Is there a single man in this world who sees me as a human being?" "I do!" Chase shouted, the sudden volume making her jump. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing her shoulders. "Yes, it started as a transaction. But then I read your file. I saw what you built. I saw how you stood there on those stairs, terrified but unbroken. And tonight, Nora, you ran into a burning building with me. You saved us with that code. You are not a pawn." He let go of her, running a hand through his hair. "I need the drive to clear my name. But I need you to build the future. The West Chelsea project isn't a bribe. It's real. I can't build it without you. I have the money. I have the land. But I don't have the vision. You do." Nora looked at him. She saw the desperation in his eyes, not the desperation of a billionaire who wants more money, but of a man who has been alone in the dark for too long. She looked down at the hard drive. This proves he's a criminal. Yes. And these, she pointed to the bag of sketchbooks, prove he's a fraud. She looked up, her jaw setting. If we release the drive now, he goes to jail. And the divorce gets messy. Your assets get tied up in RICO investigations. You might not see a dime for years. I don't care about the money, Nora said, but I want to beat him. I want to beat him on the field before we put him in the cage. I want him to see me build something better than he ever could, and I want him to know it was me. Chase watched her, a slow respect dawning on his face. You want to humiliate him first. I want to take his legacy, Nora said. Then you can take his freedom. Chase nodded slowly. Then we don't leak the drive yet. We hold it. We let him think he's safe. We let him come after the project. And when he overextends, we drop the hammer. Nora finished. She picked up the canvas bag. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow I want a drafting table. And I want the best structural engineer in the city. If we're going to war, I need a crew. Chase watched her walk out. For the first time in 5 years, the ghosts of his past didn't feel so loud. The West Chelsea rail yards were a graveyard of rusted steel and weeds, a scar on the perfectly manicured face of Manhattan's West Side. It was ugly, dangerous, and legally complicated. To Nora Winslow, it looked like paradise. 3 days had passed since the heist. Julian was publicly spinning a narrative that Nora had suffered a nervous breakdown and was resting at an undisclosed location. He hadn't reported the theft. He couldn't admit what was missing from the safe. It was a stalemate. Nora stepped out of the SUV, her boots sinking into the mud. She wore jeans, a white hard hat, and a neon vest over her blazer. Chase stood by the car, watching. You don't have to come out, Nora said. I can handle the foreman. I like watching you work, Chase said, leaning against the hood. Besides, I pay the bills. Nora rolled her eyes, but a small smile touched her lips. She walked toward the group of men gathered by the excavator. They were a rough crew, union guys who had worked for Julian Thorne for years before Chase outbid him for the contract. The foreman, a burly man named Kowalski, spat on the ground as she approached. So, Kowalski grunted, eyeing her up and down. You're the billionaire's girlfriend, here to pick out the curtain colors? The crew snickered. Nora didn't stop walking until she was toe-to-toe with him. She wasn't tall, but she held herself with the posture of a queen. I'm the lead architect, Nora said loud enough for the back row to hear. And the first thing you're going to do, Kowalski, is move that pylon. It's sitting on top of a subterranean drainage line from the 1920s. If you dig there, you'll flood the site and cost us 3 weeks. Kowalski blinked. The plans don't show a line there. The city plans are wrong, Nora said. I checked the original railway schematics from the public library archives last night. The line is there. Move the pylon. Kowalski hesitated. He looked at Chase, expecting the man to intervene. Chase didn't move. He just pointed at Nora. You heard the boss, Chase called out. Kowalski looked back at Nora, assessing her. Then he nodded. All right. Check the line. Move the rig. As the men dispersed, getting to work, a black sedan pulled up to the construction gate. Nora's stomach dropped. She knew that car. Julian stepped out. He was impeccable as always, but there were dark circles under his eyes. He flanked by 2 lawyers in grey suits. Get off my property, Julian, Chase said, pushing off the car and walking toward the gate. It's not your property for long, Julian sneered. He held up a sheaf of papers. Injunction. We're filing a motion that the purchase of this land was made using funds misappropriated from the Thorne marital estate. Until the divorce is settled, this site is frozen." He looked at Nora, his eyes cold and dead. "I told you, Nora. You walk away with nothing." The construction noise died down. The workers watched. This was it. The public humiliation. Nora felt the old fear rising, the instinct to shrink, to apologize. But then she felt the weight of the boots on her feet. She thought of the red drive in the safe back at the estate. She thought of the baby she lost, and the nursery that became a humidor. She walked past Chase and stood in front of the gate. "This isn't marital assets, Julian," she said, her voice steady. "My contract with Drayton Industries predates our separation. And as for the injunction," she turned to the gathered press photographers who had been tipped off by Julian's team and were now snapping pictures from the sidewalk. "You can freeze the land," Nora announced, "but you can't freeze the truth." She pulled a roll of blueprints from her bag. She unrolled them against the chain-link fence. It was a rendering of the new building, a stunning, twisting tower of glass and vertical gardens that seemed to defy gravity. "This is the Phoenix," Nora said to the cameras. "It's a sustainable, net-zero housing complex designed for the people of New York, not just the elite. It uses the Drayton algorithm to power of itself." She looked at Julian. "And I designed it. Me, Nora Winslow. Just like I designed the Thorn Spire. Just like I designed the Opera House." The reporters shouted questions. "Did you design the spire, Nora? Is Thorn a fraud?" Julian's face turned purple. "She's lying. She's mentally unstable." "Sue me," Nora said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "I welcome discovery, Julian. I'd love to open up the archives in court. Let's see whose handwriting is really on those original drafts." Julian took a step forward, looking like he might strike her. Chase stepped in front of her, a wall of muscle and menace. "Take a step back, Julian," Chase warned low, "or you'll need a new jaw." Julian glared at them, vibrating with rage. But the cameras were rolling. He was losing the narrative. "This isn't over," Julian spat. "I will bury this project in red tape for a decade. You will never lay a single brick." He turned and stormed back to his car. As the sedan drove away, the construction crew broke into applause. Kowalski tipped his hard hat to Nora. Chase turned to her. "The Phoenix?" "I came up with it in the car," Nora admitted, her legs finally trembling. "Is it too cheesy?" "It's perfect," Chase said. He looked at the rendering on the fence. "And we're going to build it, even if I have to buy the city council to get the permits." Nora looked at the empty, muddy lot. For the first time in her life, she didn't see a wasteland. She saw a canvas, and she wasn't painting it for Julian Thorne. "Let's get back to work," Nora said. The attack, when it came, wasn't against the building. It wasn't an injunction or a lawsuit. It was quieter, crueler, and designed to break Nora Winslow's spirit before she ever stepped foot in a courtroom. It had been 2 weeks of rapid progress on the Phoenix. The foundation was poured, and the media was eating up the David versus Goliath narrative. Chase Drayton's return to the public eye was hailed as a resurrection. Nora was being called a visionary. Then Nora's phone rang at 2 a.m. It was her younger sister Maya, who lived in a modest townhouse in Queens with their ailing mother. Maya was sobbing so hard Nora could barely understand her. "Nora, they're here. The police. They're tearing the house apart." Nora was out of bed and into her jeans before the call ended. Chase met her in the hallway, already dressed, his security detail alerted. "What is it?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep, but sharp with alertness. "Julian!" Nora spat the name like a curse. "He sent the cops to my mother's house. Maya says they have a warrant for stolen corporate assets." The drive to Queens was a blur of red taillights and fury. When they arrived, the scene was a nightmare. Blue lights flashed against the siding of the childhood home Nora had fought so hard to keep. Her mother, confused and frail in her nightgown, was sitting on the porch steps, shivering. Maya was screaming at a detective who was carrying out boxes of old tax returns and photo albums. Nora leaped out of the car, ignoring Chase's warning hand. "Get away from her!" Nora screamed, rushing up the walk. She wrapped her coat around her mother. "What is the meaning of this?" The detective, a man Nora recognized from Julian's payroll, officially off duty but always available for private consultation, smirked. "We received a tip that Miss Winslow, was hiding embezzled assets in family properties. Just doing our due diligence." "There is nothing here but memories," Nora cried, tears of frustration hot on her face. "He's doing this to terrorize an old woman." "We found this," the detective said, holding up a small velvet jewelry box. He opened it to reveal a diamond brooch. Nora gasped. It was a gift Julian had given her for their 5th anniversary. She had left it behind. She was sure of it. "Grand larceny," the detective said. "This is reported stolen property from the Thorne estate. Looks like your sister was holding on to it for you." Maya's face went pale. "I've never seen that before. He planted it." "Arrest her," the detective ordered, nodding at Maya. "No!" Nora lunged forward, but Chase was there. He moved like a shadow, stepping between the detective and the women. He didn't shout. He didn't raise his fists. He simply held up his phone. "Detective Miller," Chase said, his voice low and terrifyingly calm. "I have the police commissioner on video call, and my legal team is currently filing a motion regarding a false police report and planting of evidence. I suggest you look at the timestamp on the security camera I had installed on this porch 3 days ago." The detective froze. "Camera?" Chase pointed to a tiny, almost invisible lens tucked into the eaves of the porch. "It streams directly to my private server. It shows your partner placing that box in the planter 5 minutes ago." The color drained from Miller's face. On the phone screen, the commissioner's face was red with rage. "Miller, stand down immediately." The police retreated, the raid dissolving into a chaotic withdrawal. But the damage was done. Nora's mother was weeping, clutching her chest. Maya was shaking. Chase knelt beside Nora's mother, his demeanor shifting instantly from warrior to caregiver. "Let's get you inside, Mom. I'll make tea." Later, in the small, cluttered kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and old paper, Nora sat with her head in her hands. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving her hollow. "He won't stop," Nora whispered. "He'll go after everyone I love. The building isn't worth this, Chase. My reputation isn't worth my mother's health." Chase stood by the sink, washing a mug. He turned to her. The kitchen light was dim, casting long shadows across his face. "He wants you to quit," Chase said. "That's the only way he wins. If you fold now, he learns that terror works. He'll do it to the next woman. And the next." "I'm not strong enough," Nora admitted, her voice cracking. "I can design a skyscraper that withstands a hurricane, but I can't withstand him. He knows all my weak points." Chase walked over to her. He pulled a chair out and sat opposite her, his knees brushing hers. He took her hands, not a handshake this time, but a grip of solidarity. "You aren't fighting him alone anymore," Chase said intensely. "You think I put that camera up by accident? I've had a security detail on your family since the night we left the gala. I knew he would come here." Nora looked up at him, shocked. "You knew?" "I know how bullies think," Chase said. "Nora, look at me. I have spent 5 years in the dark, plotting revenge. It was cold and it was lonely. But these last 2 weeks, watching you work, watching you fight for that pylon, it's the first time I've felt alive since Chicago." He paused, his thumb brushing her wrist. "I am not just investing in a building. I am investing in you. We are going to finish this. Not just for us, but so he can never hurt anyone like this again." Nora looked into his eyes that had seen betrayal and darkness, and chose to fight anyway. She squeezed his hand back. "Okay," she whispered, "but no more defense. No more reacting. We strike." "Agreed," Chase said. "The injunction hearing is on Monday. We don't just win the motion. We end the war." The New York Supreme Court was packed. It was the divorce trial of the decade, masquerading as a corporate intellectual property dispute. Thorne versus Winslow and Drayton Industries. Julian sat at the plaintiff's table, looking every inch the aggrieved titan of industry. His suit was navy, his tie a somber grey. He projected stability. Nora sat beside Chase and Elena. She wore white, a sharp, tailored suit that made her look like a blade of light in the mahogany room. She didn't look at Julian. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Halloway, banged her gavel. "Mr. Thorne, your opening regarding the injunction." Julian's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. Nora Winslow was an employee of the Thorne Group, as well as a spouse. Every sketch, every concept she produced during the marriage is the property of the Thorne Group. The Phoenix is a derivative work of designs she made while under contract. We ask for immediate cessation of construction and transfer of all assets." He called witnesses, former assistants who lied and said Nora only fetched coffee, architects who claimed they had drawn the lines Nora had conceptualized. It was a parade of perjury, bought and paid for. Julian took the stand. He looked at the jury with sad, dog-like eyes. "I tried to help her," Julian said, his voice trembling with fake emotion. "Nora has struggles. She imagines things. I let her doodle to make her feel involved. But she never understood the engineering. She's a lovely woman, but she's not an architect." Nora's hands clenched into fists under the table. Chase placed his hand over hers. "Wait," his touch said. "Cross-examination?" the judge asked. Elena Vane stood up. She didn't hold a notepad. She held the red hard drive. "Mr. Thorne," Elena said, walking to the podium, "you claim Miss Winslow lacks the technical knowledge to design complex systems." "She struggles with basic math," Julian scoffed. A few people in the gallery chuckled. "Interesting," Elena said, "because I have here the metadata from the server logs of the Thorne Spire project. Can you explain why the user Nora W. was logged in for 400 hours reviewing structural load algorithms, while the user Julian T. was logged in for 0? Julian stiffened. "I delegate." "Do you delegate felony wire fraud as well?" Elena asked sharply. "Objection!" Julian's lawyer screamed. "I am introducing new evidence," Elena said, turning to the judge. "Exhibit A, the Prometheus drive." The courtroom went silent. Julian's face turned the color of ash. "This drive," Elena announced, plugging it into the court's AV system, "contains the source code for the Drayton algorithm, stolen 5 years ago. But more importantly, it contains audio logs. Julian Thorne has a habit of recording his meetings to ensure leverage over his co-conspirators." She tapped a key. Julian's voice, clear and arrogant, filled the room. Recording date, July 12th, 2020. "I don't care if the bridge collapses, Jerry. Just use the cheap steel." Nora caught the error in the stress test, but I gaslit her into thinking she carried the decimal wrong. She's crying in the bathroom right now. It's pathetic. But God, she's a gold mine. As long as she stays insecure, I'm the genius." The gallery gasped. The jury looked sick. Nora stared at Julian. He wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at the table, his empire crumbling in real time. Elena played another clip. Recording date, last week. "Plant the jewelry at the mother's house. Break the girl. If Nora shows up to court, I'm finished. Make sure she's too broken to speak." "This is a deep fake," Julian shouted, standing up, knocking his chair over. "This is AI. Drayton is a tech wizard. He faked it." Chase stood up then. He buttoned his jacket slowly. "It's not a fake, Julian," Chase said, his voice carrying to the back of the room without a microphone, "because the drive also contains the bank transfer records where you paid the hacker, and the hacker is currently in federal custody, ready to testify." The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. 2 FBI agents stepped in, followed by a U.S. Marshal. Justice Holloway looked at the agents, then at Julian. "Mr. Thorne, it seems this is no longer a civil matter." The agents moved in. "Julian Thorne, you are under arrest for corporate espionage, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit fraud." As they handcuffed him, Julian looked at Nora. He looked for fear. He looked for pity. Nora stood up. She looked him in the eye. "You were right about one thing, Julian," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I did imagine things. I imagined a version of you that was a good man. But I stopped imagining a long time ago. Now, I build." They dragged him out. The flashbulbs popped, but this time Nora didn't look down. She turned to Chase. "Is it over?" she asked. Chase smiled, and it was a smile of pure, unburdened freedom. "The war is over, Nora. Now, we build the peace." 1 year later, the Manhattan skyline had a new crown jewel. The Phoenix didn't just scrape the sky, it embraced it. It was a twisting helix of glass and greenery, a vertical forest that breathed life into the concrete jungle of West Chelsea. It generated its own power, recycled its own water, and housed a mixed-income community that was already thriving. The grand opening gala was the event of the century, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no stifling humidity, no forced laughter. The air was crisp and the music was jazz, alive and improvisational. Nora stood on the observation deck on the 91st floor. She wore gold tonight, a dress of shimmering metallic fabric that looked like armor made of starlight. She held a glass of champagne, looking out at the city she had conquered. "They're waiting for your speech," a voice said behind her. Nora turned. Chase was there. He looked older. Tired, perhaps, but happier. The lines of stress around his eyes had softened into laugh lines. "I'm just taking a moment," Nora said, "to remember." "Remember what?" Chase moved to stand beside her, leaning his elbows on the railing. "The girl who walked out of the Pierre Hotel," Nora said. She felt like she was dying. She didn't know that she was just molting. Chase chuckled. "You were terrifying that night, you know. Even crying. You had this dignity. It scared the hell out of me." "You saved me," Nora said softly. "No," Chase corrected, turning to face her. "I opened the car door. You got in. And then you saved me. You pulled me out of that dark room in my house. You made me believe in something other than revenge." He reached into his pocket. For a second, Nora's heart stopped. Was this it? Chase pulled out a small black velvet box, but it wasn't a ring. It was a key, an old-fashioned, heavy iron key. "What is this?" Nora asked. "I bought the townhouse in Queens," Chase said. "I renovated it. It's in your name. For your mother. For Maya. It's safe now. Forever." Nora felt the tears welling up, but they were good tears. tears of gratitude. "Chase, you didn't have to. I wanted to," he said. "Nora, He hesitated. The billionaire who could buy countries suddenly struggling for words. "I don't know how to do this part. The part where the project is finished. What happens to us?" Nora took the key, her fingers brushing his palm. She stepped closer, closing the gap between them. "The project isn't finished," she said. "We have the Tokyo waterfront proposal next month, and the solar grid in Dubai." Chase searched her eyes, hope flaring in his chest. "We do?" "I'm not working with anyone else," Nora said. "I found my partner." "Just a partner?" Chase asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. Nora smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who owned her past, her present, and her future. "Ask me again after the Tokyo project," she teased. Then she softened. "Ask me tonight, when the guests leave." Chase laughed, a sound of pure joy. He took her hand, the hand he had lifted a year ago to save her pride, and he kissed it again. But this time, he didn't let go. "Ready to face the cameras?" he asked. Nora looked out at the city lights, then back at him. "I'm ready," she said. They walked back inside together, hand in hand, stepping out of the silence and into the applause. And that is the story of how Nora Winslow went from a silenced wife to the architect of her own destiny. She proved that your voice is your most powerful tool, and that sometimes the hardest walk you'll ever take is the one away from everything you know, toward the person you're meant to be. Julian Thorne sits in a cell, watching the sun reflect off the phoenix, a permanent reminder of the woman he couldn't break. Thank you so much for watching this story. If Nora's journey inspired you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength, and subscribe for more stories of justice, romance, and resilience. See you in the next video.